Chapter 11 covers community well-being, living arrangements, and social interactions. The learning objectives for this chapter include report how living situation can affect well-being, discuss the various types of housing and long-term care living arrangements for older adults, understand the different social and health services to support aging in place, and report some of the challenges that older prisoners face and list some recommendations to address their health care. It may be surprising to some, but 80% of older adults live in urban or suburban areas, with 19% living in non-metropolitan areas, which includes the rural communities. Living arrangements of older adults are linked to their income, health status, availability of caregivers, and geographic location. Access to transportation is really important in later life, as well as access to health care, which may explain why many older adults live in metropolitan area. Because in the rural areas, it might be a little bit more difficult to access healthcare, transportation to get to healthcare, just being further away from things. However, those in rural settings experience more satisfying social relationships with neighbors and friends and have less rates of isolation. This graying of the suburbs is the idea that we have more older adults in the suburbs than ever before. These older adults tend to have higher incomes, are less likely to feel alone, and report better health. And you can see in the graph the increase of 65 plus in urban and suburban areas. The suburban is the highest of the three there. Part of the living arrangement in older life is often what we call relocation. And relocation in later life is not as common as you might think. You tend to think that all older adults move to Florida or Arizona or something like that. But older adults are actually less likely to move than adults under the age of 65. And when relocation does occur, it's often in relation to a major life event, such as retirement, poor health, loss of a partner, change in income, or other factors. And this determines what kind of housing situation they choose. Assisted living, moving in with their adult children, a senior living community, or something else. It might depend on why they're moving. Adapting to the relocation depends on a lot of different factors. Moves that entail extensive lifestyle changes, such as into an assisted living facility, can take more time to adapt to compared to maybe moving in with your adult children. And also, a challenging part of older adults' relocation is when they're leaving a home that they lived in for a long time. This might be a symbol of their identity, it has a lot of meaning, it has a lot of memories, and so this can be challenging. It also may make them feel they are losing their sense of control and independence, as the home was kind of their space, and now they're moving into a space that is, run by someone else. And then part of this is the downsizing. When you sell your home and move, there's a big downsizing process, which means getting rid of many of the possessions to be able to make that move. This can be really hard. Again, a lot of memories, a lot of meaning to these things that they have to get rid of. Independent housing is the most popular option among older adults. Over 90% of those 65 and older live in this type of housing. This is because the desire to stay in one's own home is the number one choice for most older adults. Older adults find their own homes to be more comfortable, they have meaning, they often own their homes, so they do not have a mortgage payment, and therefore it is more cost effective to remain in their home. However, remaining in the home may not be cheap. There are often more repair and maintenance costs, as these homes are often a lot older. And additionally, there may be costs to make the home work for their needs as they age, maintenance or upgrades to make it appropriate for their healthcare or otherwise issues as they age. And I really like this quote in the book that sums up the challenge for older adults remaining in their home. It says, "Many older adults live in Peter Pan housing, apparently designed for someone who will never grow old." So it's just this idea that housing is not designed with older adults in mind, and we'll talk about that in this presentation. So Again, aging in place. This is the universal desire to stay in one's community as long as possible. This allows for a familiar environment, easy access to social support systems, and it really allows older adults to feel in control. Being able to remain in the community is associated with better health, life satisfaction, and self-esteem. And there is a growing demand for services to assist older adults who want to remain in their homes. Unfortunately, for older adults who do not access these supports, they may end up feeling isolated in their home because they cannot get out into the community and nobody comes in, and so they feel maybe isolated in the walls of their home. Age-friendly communities are one way of offering a supportive place later in life. These lifelong communities support aging in multiple ways through providing supports for physical, mental, and social health of older adults. So really it's just building community with all ages in mind. And this kind of links with what we call universal design. It's becoming more popular among home building and home upgrading. Universal design is the design of products and places that allow choice and flexibility by people of all ability levels. So not just aging, but any sort of ability level of anybody of any age. This means that homes can adapt to remain useful for people as they get older. And one aspect of this could be technology. They can help older adults remain safely in their homes for longer and provide caregivers with some peace of mind. For example, in this image, you'll see a number of ways a home can be retrofitted to be a smart home. So for example, the appliances in the home might have indicators to let a caregiver know if the pattern of the older adult accessing these appliances has changed. So for example, if the TV hasn't been turned on or the refrigerator hasn't been opened, this could indicate that the person is maybe not getting out of bed and not feeling well. They need to eat. So if the refrigerator is not being open, that could be an indicator that the caregiver needs to get over there and check on them. Additionally, there could be security cameras or audio sensors or a motion sensor that kind of lets a caregiver know when and where the older adult is moving around in their home. And they can even have things like the pill box indicating to the caregiver whether or not they've been taking their medications on time. So there's lots of really, really interesting ways that if the older adult agrees to these technological devices, that a caregiver could really kind of take care of them virtually. So for older adults that cannot or choose not to remain in their own home, there are a number of other housing options. You'll want to read about all of them in your textbook because they have lots of really interesting details about how these different types of housing options differ and what are the benefits or drawbacks of them. And there might be things that you've never really heard of before. And you'll be posting about an option like this in your weekly post. So it might be helpful to read through and get some ideas of what kind of housing option you want to look up and share and talk about in your post. So I know I shared an example of older adults living with younger adults, like college-age students, and I think it was in the Netherlands. So kind of this co-housing where you have this intergenerational connection between younger and older adults in one place, and they kind of reciprocate value to one another. I think that's pretty cool. There's also a dementia village in Europe as well that really creates a safe space for those with dementia to feel like they're in a community but provides safety. So I think these are just some of the really neat options that you can read about in the book or in the additional videos and articles I posted. So for older adults that want to age in place, remain in their community or their home, there are a number of services that might assist older adults and their caregivers so that they may age in place. These programs may do one or more of the following to help. Provide chore services to maintain the home, provide personal care for assisted daily living activities that we talked about in a prior presentation. Provide home delivered meals to make sure they're eating and eating healthfully. Completing home repair and modification so that they may have what they need based on any issues they have with aging related issues such as maybe needing a railing or something like that. respite care so that maybe they could go to a daycare and have an adult daycare so that they can have social support and activity, not feel isolated, get out of the house, and provide some respite for the caregiver as well. And then safety alert systems, similar to what I just talked about on the previous slide. These organizations along the right-hand side are right here in LA County, and they're organizations that I've worked with for internships and service learning in my classes. And they provide support to our older adult community with a number of these things that we just talked about. For example, the Heart of Ida connects local handyman volunteers with older adults that need upgrades to their home to make them more safe, such as installation of bathroom bars or repairs to stairs. So this is really an interesting way to volunteer and help repair and upgrade homes for older adults. Now, while some services may be directly in the home, as I just mentioned, others are out in the community. For example, adult daycare is a place for older adults to go for social support and connection, while also giving respite for caregivers, as I mentioned. But transportation is also another huge support older adults need in order to remain in their homes long term. They need to be able to get to doctor's appointments, get to the grocery store, get out of the house, and often if they're not driving anymore, they need something to support that. There are some governmental programs in place to make sure housing is affordable for older adults. You might not have heard of Section 202. This is a program aimed specifically at older adults to provide housing for those 62 and older whose incomes are less than 50% of the median income for their area. Additionally, the government subsidizes building costs for housing built specifically for older adults to incentivize these housing projects to occur. Section 8, you've likely heard of this, can assist older adults as well by providing vouchers for reduced rent. However, budget cuts have resulted in fewer vouchers to assist older adults with housing needs. Overall, less than 5% of older adults benefit from federally funded housing assistance programs, which has led to a housing crisis among this age group and increased the rate of homelessness. So, homelessness among older adults is a concern given their vulnerability due to health and other needs in later life. Approximately 8 to 10% of the homeless population are older adults. The economic crisis in the late 2000s pushed more older adults into homelessness, and the lack of support and services for them can really magnify the usual occurring age-related declines in their biological and psychological health, just really making things accelerate at a faster pace or even worse for them. Unfortunately, as we discussed in the last chapter, the rates of homelessness is projected to increase across the country. One of the terms they use is the graying of the homeless, and by 2050, there are expected to be 95,000 older adults living without stable housing, which is more than double the current population for this group as of 2013. So this is a growing issue that gerontologists are and social workers and policymakers are looking at and trying to figure out what can we do. So to summarize, again, as always, definitely read the chapter. There's a lot more detail about the different types of housing and a section on prisoners that I didn't go into. So definitely take time to read the chapter to make sure you get the full information. But to summarize what we talked about in this presentation, there are a variety of housing options for older adults, and some are more conducive than others based on personal factors of each older adult. So, why assisted living might be great for one person, it might not work well for another, and vice versa with living with your adult children. Each person's going to have their own factors that are important in weighing to decide their housing option. The majority of older adults are independently living and would like to continue to do so. And as we discussed, this is called aging in place. And when more support is needed, older adults can move into continuing care retirement communities or assisted living facilities. And these are kind of more your typical nursing home as you imagine, with skilled nurses and healthcare at your bedside when needed. But contrary to what popular belief is, only about 4% of older adults live in skilled nursing facilities, and this is often at the oldest old ages. So you kind of imagine that everybody kind of moves into a nursing home, but that's not the case. And there are a variety of supports and services that can help older adults remain in their homes longer so that they can continue to age in place. And finally, homelessness is a concern for older adults, and the rates are expected to increase. So this is an important topic as we think about the housing issues for older adults.